Balake. Where is Balake at?
My name's Blake.
Do you want to go to war, Balake? I'm for real. Ron.
Ron is here, everyone. Welcome back for more SPTV. I'm joined today once again by Natalie Webster. How's it going, Natalie?
Fabulous. Great day to not be in a cult.
Every day is a great day not to be in a cult. Guys, for any newcomers, Natalie's channel on YouTube is Scientology Life After a Cult. If you are not subscribed to Natalie, run over there right now and do that. That would be amazing. We are live streaming to Natalie's channel as well. So you said that people were asking you some questions about Scientology's belief in life after death and similar questions like that. And it reminded you of an incident that you went through in Hawaii. Was this back in 2017? 2018. And for you, the story and what you went through in this story is in part kind of helps to answer the question about Scientologists' belief in life after death. So what happened?
Well, January 2008 was what's now referred to as the Hawaii Missile Crisis. And I was back home in Hawaii on the Big Island with
Was it 8 or 18?
Family. Excuse me, say that again.
Was it 8 or 18?
18. 2018. So this was just a few years ago. So we're back home in Hawaii. We try to get back there each year to see family. We're there seeing my grandma and my dad. And it's me and all of my kids. 1, 2, 3, 4 generations of my family. If you count my grandma being there on vacation to see the family. It was the day we were getting ready to head back to Minnesota. So we all like to stay in one place. So we usually rent a house that can fit all or most of us. And then we all stay there. So we were kind of picking up the house. You know how you do when you're at a short-term rental and you got to clean up before you leave, or at least I do. And all of a sudden that morning, not everybody else was up, but they were up pretty quick after this happened. My son, I think, was at the beach. Our phones start going off with this loud alarm sound. And I mean, everybody's phone all around the house, you could hear it. And they didn't go off at exactly the same time either. So they're going off with this loud noise over and over again. And we're all looking at our phones and everybody is getting exactly the same message. We turned on the television. We saw exactly the same message. And it was ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. This is not the message you want to see. At first we thought, my brother-in-law was there and he's really level-headed. And we're like, well, this can't be, because your initial reaction is no, this can't be. This has got to be something weird with the cell phones. We don't know what happened. But when we turned on the television and that's the same message that was blaring and it kept going off over and over again, it would stop and then it would start up again. We started to take it seriously. And we thought, okay. And again, in 2018, we were already all out of Scientology. The family that were in Scientology had left Scientology. And we're thinking, all right, this seems like this could actually really be true. So some of the family members went in the middle of the house because it was the most enclosed space. There really aren't basements in Hawaii. And it was where we thought would probably be the most isolated. While at the same time, we're thinking, what's it really going to do? If there's a ballistic missile coming, is it being in the middle of the house really going to make a difference? And where's it headed? Is it headed to Oahu, where Pearl Harbor is? Or is it headed to the Big Island? Is it going to affect all of the islands? We were literally at one point, or at least I was Googling, like, how far does a ballistic missile, blow up area reach? And it wasn't long before we were like, okay, we just have to take this seriously because it seems real. Everywhere we turn, this message is just blaring over and over and over again. And that sound, when alerts go off now on the cell phone, Amber Alert or whatever, still completely triggers me and people in my family too, for obvious reasons. So we're all in there and I'm thinking, okay, if this is really happening, how are we going to do this? Because I thought, okay, I have no control over what's going to happen here. Absolutely none. So if this is going to happen, what is the best possible scenario for it to happen? Do I want to be afraid and scared in the same room as a washer and dryer? No, I did not. My 3 kids were there. My grandson was there. My granddaughter wasn't born yet. My grandson was about a year old. My daughter, Kelsey, says, she's like, we need to go get Jared. And I had told her, I'm like, you can't leave. You have a baby. And she just ran out the door, got in the car. He wasn't that far. She went to go pick him up from the beach. He had gotten the same alerts on his phone, and he was just going to stay at the beach, which what he said made sense. But she pulls up the car and she starts yelling for him to get in the car, get in the car. There's this missile coming. He's like, I know, I want to be by the ocean. And she starts screaming at him. And she says, if we're all going to die, we are going to effing die together. Get in the effing car. And then he did. He got in the car and she brought him back. And we just thought, okay, so most people were in the middle of the house. And I'm thinking, I'm just trying to make peace with this and think, okay, if I cannot control it and this is happening, what should we do? And in that moment, I don't know if you've ever thought what would go through your head when you think that you're going to die. I mean, we really believe, us along with a ton of people thought that. I mean, can you imagine, Aaron? What would be going through your head?
I have thought about that. And it depends on whether it's something that you have that you can conceive at all that you can have control over or to prevent.
Mhm.
And I've always thought that if it was something like an asteroid, just a giant asteroid heading right towards you, and there's no point even running, I always felt that there would actually be a certain amount of peace to it. Like, what's the point of panicking about the inevitable?
Exactly. And that's pretty much where I landed. I thought, okay, at least we are all together. I don't want my children and my family and literally 4 generations of my family, because my dad and my grandma were on the island, to all die together, but at least we'll be together, right? And then I thought, my ex-husband was there too, my first husband. I don't think his fiance was with us that trip. My first husband I had met in the Sea Org. We got married when we were teenagers in the Sea Org. And he was there. And what was going through my head actually is I thought, okay, I don't know what happens after I die. I was thinking like, I don't know what's going to happen. I know what I used to believe in Scientology, but I'm just not sure anymore. I'm not 100% on anything. And then I thought, what if it's true that where you die, you get stuck there? Like I would be stuck in the house for eternity with my ex-husband. Yeah, this is what was going through my head, and I love Dan, but I didn't want to spend eternity with him in this house. Though if the rest of my family was there and we could all ghost together, then maybe. So I decided. Go ahead.
Well, on my channel, I've explained kind of what Scientologists believe happens to you when you die, and I always explain it though as far as the implant station and being shot down in a little baby body, and you have your memory wiped and all that stuff. But I've never actually explained, I think, that Scientologists do believe that ghosts and poltergeists and demons or whatever are just beings, thetans, that somehow got stuck where they died, as opposed to, well, L. Ron Hubbard never explained why those beings didn't go to the implant station. So I don't know about that, but I don't know that I've spoken much about ghosts and Scientology's belief in it.
Yeah. And I wasn't, post Scientology prior to that. Like you were saying, I thought, okay, we die and we come back in another body. And I just wasn't sure. I didn't know. And so I thought, you know what? Okay, well, I'm going to cover my bases. I wanted to get my kids outside, or at least we had this beautiful kind of porch area, lanai outside that was really nice. And I thought, okay, well, maybe we'll just all go there, because if we're in the house or out of the house, it's just not going to make a difference. And I had decided, okay, that's what we'll do. I'm going to go get everybody. We need to get out of that stupid room that's not going to stop anything, and just be in a nicer environment to just find, just try and kind of find some peace. It was really quiet. Everybody was pretty quiet, except for checking. Different people were checking to see if we could find updates anywhere on what was happening. We couldn't find that anywhere. I had called Tony back home. Other than Tony and his boys, like I said, my whole family was there in Hawaii. And he was at work by then. and I let him know what was happening. And he couldn't find anything on the internet or anything yet that said that this was happening or this alert had even gone out. And so I was like, okay, I'm like, I love you. I'm going to go check on everybody and I'll call you back. And I was never going to call him back. I just didn't want him to be on the phone listening if it happened. So I got off the phone with him. And then I went and I was just walking into the room to go grab my kids or everyone and say, hey, I'm all for if we're going to die, we don't do it next to the washer and dryer. We are in Hawaii. Maybe we could even make it out to the beach. I don't know, but this is not the place. And right when I got in the room, someone said, it's not real. It's not real. There's a tweet. And I think it was Tulsi Gabbard, who was she was in oh goodness, my sister would know. She was in Congress or something. Now I think she works in the news. And she had sent something out saying, this is a mistake, that this alert is not real. There is no missile heading to Hawaii. People were putting their kids in manholes, taking off the manhole covers and putting their children into the sewer system, thinking that maybe that would save them. Because remember, nobody has a basement in Hawaii. And I mean, it was chaotic. Where we were on the island, I don't recall that we heard sirens outside, but apparently the sirens were going off everywhere else in the major areas all over Oahu. I think different parts of, I think where we were, we just couldn't hear it, or we just weren't hearing it. And when we found out that, okay, this is not happening, this isn't real, it was almost like everybody's reaction was we were just still so in shock that it took more than a minute for us to just really feel that relief, because we were just like here. And when we finally processed that, okay, it's not happening. Okay. We had such relief. And then later we got really freaking angry. I think a lot of people did. I know they did all over Hawaii, because think about it. However many, over 1 million, 2 million people in the morning, it was a morning, and it was at, around like 8 o'clock or so, 8, 9 a.m., all getting the same alert, being told it's not a drill to take shelter. And for 38 minutes, thinking you and anybody else around you is going to die. Jim Carrey talks about it. He was there. He was in Hawaii writing his book. And
that's where I heard this story.
Mm-hmm. And with 10 minutes to go, in fact, the cover of his book that he ended up publishing I think it's a picture he took of himself where it was his face when he found out he had 10 minutes to live. And he could not get to anybody. I remember getting familiar with his story. I saw something where he shared it, and wherever he was, there was a great view, and he pretty much settled into there and just really, really just dropped into gratitude, how much he was grateful for, and just had peace about it. It was insane. There's so many stories and people that were there, lived there, and visitors and whatnot. We were very, very relieved, but it really kind of made me realize too, like, I don't know what's going to happen when we die. And someone had asked me in the comments, like, what I thought about death now, or, how sometimes Scientologists can be very cavalier in referring to somebody dying as, oh, they dropped the body. They just dropped the body. It's just like saying like, oh, I dropped cable, and yeah, I cut the cord. Just know, that lack of emotion or trying to minimize that loss. And Aaron, you tell me what you think, but I think that is done in large part to not slow down production, so that you get back to going on course, going and getting your Scientology auditing, or working on your post. They just dropped the body. It's not, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. I think for me, the concept of minimalizing, trivializing the loss of life is kind of part of an overall greater minimalizing of core social values, well, such as family, right? And by resting everything upon this belief that we're all 76 trillion years old, and None of us are really related to each other. We're all independent, godlike beings. And we all, I guess, spawned from some spiritual big bang way back when that L. Ron Hubbard never bothered to try to explain. And to minimize the importance of all important social things that we hold value, that we value socially, that we hold dear socially, it allows L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology to put Scientology itself above all else that someone might generally hold to be important in society. And I think dropping the body is part of that greater trivialization of what normal people would consider important. So yeah, like for sure. I mean, when my brother died, he'd been declared, we'd been disconnected for a couple years. They didn't even, I was in the Sea Org at the time. They didn't even want me to go to the funeral. I'm like, oh, he's just an SP. Why would you go to the funeral?
Did they say that to you?
John Lundeen said that to me. Yeah. The captain of Asho Day.
Is he still there?
Go to the funeral. I mean, yeah, well, Asho Day and Foundation combined, and they put in a new command team, and John Lundeen, last I knew, was sent to Flag here in Clearwater, and it's probably like a letter registrar or something like that. But yeah, they're like, oh, and then because, you know, I knew the rules and I knew how people thought, in order to fight to go, I had to pretend like I didn't really want to go and I didn't really care, but it would create bad PR with the family. And so I had to go, you know? But,
yeah, completely.
So, but everyone trivializes loss of life, families, just holidays. I mean, for most people, holidays are important just because of family, regardless of whether you care about the holiday itself. It's time to spend with family. This is something that I'm not even sure I've totally unwound. You know, the idea in Scientology that family is not really important, you know, just spend so much of my life thinking that way.
Yeah. When you say unwound, do you mean like kind of just getting rid of that idea or understanding more what it was and what it is today?
I mean, I'm not even sure I've really gotten rid of that way of thinking. Blood is thicker than water. I go, is it really though? I don't know. I guess you, I don't know. I've just spent so much of my life thinking a particular way. It's one of those things that I like to think I've gotten over that, but I'm not totally sure that I have.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You?
It was all to control us so that we wouldn't be distracted from what we were doing. I really think that that was a large part of it. My family, I've always been close with my family. And for me, I think growing up in Hawaii has a lot to do with it. We have a different concept of family. It's not just blood. We have what's called like my grandma had what are called Hanai sons, which are kind of like her adopted sons, but they're not legally adopted. So you have a Hanai family. And once you're family like that, like my ex-husband, like Dan, I mean, all these years later, and we're traveling to Hawaii together with the kids and the grandkids, and he and his fiance come to Minnesota, and we're family. That would be considered like a Hanai family. So it's different. But as far as the concept of family, yeah, I think it's completely, I would say I definitely no longer hold on to that there are other things that could be more important. I am guilty of not prioritizing my family at times. That is something that I struggle with, especially with work, which I think is not uncommon even outside of Scientology. But I think that this is something, and you tell us in the chat, I think even people who've never been in Scientology might be able to relate to that, because there is this idea of it's like they fight against each other. Family is really important, but you have to do these things, and work is important too. And where do you find that balance? I think it's a really kind of common ongoing problem. But in Scientology and the Sea Org, it is next level, because it's all about the group. And by group, they mean Scientology itself, the organization. That's why it's always the whole, you in Scientology, you protect the group first. So you isolate whoever's being a ding dong or whatever, and then you handle them later, afterwards. But you protect the group first. Everything is about this whole group first. And that's where they get you so much in this mindset and brainwashing of, you need to do what's best for the group, as if the group as a whole is more important than anything else that you have going on. that's something that was so drilled into us, better than family. When I was in the Sea Org, my sister and I were both in the Sea Org, and our grandma died back in Hawaii. I was able to get the time off because I was working in the Estates Org at that time, and they weren't as crazy as some of the other organizations. She might have been I think she was still a messenger then, and she was not allowed to go. They told her she couldn't go to the funeral, so she just went. She blew and she went, and I think that's actually what got her busted down to the organization I was in, into the Estates Org, because she just went to our grandma's funeral and just didn't listen. But can you imagine, you work at a company and then they tell you, no, you can't leave to go to your family member's funeral, or you shouldn't care because your brother was declared a suppressive person. Oh, that just makes me so mad.
Yeah. I mean, particularly in Scientology, I think that it's pushed heavily to make disconnection easier, to justify why it's okay. Well, you're not disconnecting from your daughter. You don't really have a daughter. You helped create your daughter's body, but you don't create a thetan. So who really cares?
You're an immortal being.
Yeah, you'll be her daughter next lifetime or whatever.
Yeah. My takeaway though from that was kind of that I realized that, my family is a huge priority, if not the priority for me, because in that moment of thinking I was going to die, I was glad that I was with them. I wasn't happy that they were there and going to die with me, but I thought, well, at least we're doing this together. I always got to find the silver lining. So as I'm thinking we're all about to die, that we're all doing this together, that we'll be together, that they won't have to deal with the loss of this entire family. Our family would have been wiped off the planet because we were all in one place. We were all there. And it's just, I thought a few times, like back when I was still in Scientology, would my viewpoint have been different? Would I have been, and it mortifies me to think about this, would I have been standing there trying to trivialize it? Well, if it does happen, we're just all going to drop our bodies, but then, oh my gosh, they probably would have killed me and should have. But it's an interesting topic.
Do you think that you would have been wondering what you did to pull this in?
That's yeah. And I did think about that. That is one that I struggle with in my head. That's one of the ghosts that still talks to me. You pulled this in, you must have done something, because it was so ingrained. And I try to remember that it's very important, me and everybody who's ever been in a cult or situation like this, to give yourself some damn grace about it. Just because you still struggle with something doesn't mean it's never going to go away. Maybe you'll master it. Maybe you won't. Maybe it will always be a struggle, but that's okay. As long as you still maintain what you hold and believe to be true. But oh my gosh, I would hate, I quickly push that aside, but it still comes in when something happens, because I've had so many crazy things happen throughout my life. And even since I left Scientology, this happened in 2018 where we thought we were going to die. Another time there was a hurricane bearing down on us and we were stuck between a mountain and the ocean with no way out. They had shut down the roads. All of these times where I feel like, at first I looked at it like, why is it I feel like throughout my life I'm constantly being almost killed and going through that kind of that trauma and that level of upset and stress. And I think my takeaway in the end was I realized, you know what? I think the key here is almost. So maybe it's not that I pulled it in, or for whatever reason that my life has been one, Forrest Gump crazy happening after another. Maybe it's that I'm actually lucky because those things didn't happen. I wasn't shot. We did not die in the missile. There wasn't really a missile. The hurricane took a turn 8 miles out. They're a bunch of close misses. So now I try to look at it like, I'm actually quite fortunate.
You just sort of jogged my memory on some of the logical inconsistencies with what Scientology says with its the PTS SP tech,
Yeah.
potential trouble source and suppressive person. And I know that there's some Scientologists out there who will think if you're someone who constantly has things happening around them, you're either PTS or SP.
Yeah.
Meaning like accidents,
Mhm.
but happening around you, but that you don't get hurt or injured. And then there's others that would be like you just said, well, wait, but it didn't happen to me. It almost happened to me. I must be the opposite of PTS or SP because I seem to be impervious, and that's what an OT would be. And depending on
Exactly.
how you wanted to apply those policies, you could be like, you're either an SP and things are always happening around you and you're somehow the cause of that, or you're an OT, just like walking through a burning forest unscathed.
Exactly. I really believe today that, because often one of the common questions I get is, well, what do you believe today? And I'm always like, well, it just depends on the day. But I do believe that, at least I feel like we're here to experience these things and to learn from it. There are lessons to learn from everything. There's so much to learn even out of trauma. There's so much that I learned from my experience in Scientology and the Sea organization. Now, I would have preferred to not have to have learned those lessons that way, but I did. And I've always felt that since leaving Scientology, this has been my new viewpoint about it, that if I can learn from something, it's not wasted time. It's not wasted money. It's not a mistake, because it was so drilled into us that we cannot make mistakes. We cannot waste time or resources. And I'm not saying I don't go out of my way to do those things, but sometimes things go wrong or they're eventful. And I've just decided that for whatever reason in my life, that my walk through the earth is an eventful one. So I just started saying that, it's just, my life's just very eventful.
Yeah. It's funny. I wonder how many former Scientologists feel a sense of regret over wasted time, because I certainly do not. And I think sometimes I might casually explain it away as, well, thank God I got out when I was relatively young and I had a family and I was able to have a career and all that kind of stuff. But the truth is, no matter what you're doing in life, you're doing it with other people, you're having experiences, you're interacting, you're having a certain degree of fun. I mean, no matter how bad our overall, what we went through in Scientology was, no one will deny there's plenty of parts in there where you're having a lot of fun with people you really like, right? Even if you're in the Sea Org, there's plenty of times where you're having a lot of fun with people you really like. And on some level, that's what life is, just having experiences. So whether Scientology turns out to be a bunch of bullshit or not, I don't know that someone needs to view all their time spent in Scientology as wasted time. You are having experiences. Have more of them now.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And that's how, I mean, I think that's how I see life today. It's just kind of one experience after another. Some are more pleasant, but even, as I go through in my work, in my career, I try to look at everything like, okay, if this didn't go the way, if this is not the way I want it to be, if this is not the ending I want, then number one, I know then it's not the end. But what can I learn from what happened? And that has really helped me kind of reframe that, because it's not wasted. And I for me, that feels really true. That really resonates. And I'm real curious in the comments, people chime in, tell us what you think. There's just been so many things that have happened that in the end, and after what happened in 2018, that really was my takeaway from it, that we're here to learn. If you think Aaron missed out on a little fun, hit the like button.
Well, Old Scott says here, everything that happens to you is what led you to be the person you are now. That is exactly why I don't regret anything I've gone through, even the horrible things, because some lessons, some might say all lessons, really do need to be learned the hard way to be truly learned. And it's like, I think it's true. Like, let's say, I met my wife in the Sea Org and we have 3 beautiful daughters. And no matter what, it's like, how could you possibly, I wish I hadn't had that experience, when that experience is what led to now. I guess if now really, really, really sucks, then that might change your perspective. I don't
That's
know. What do you
true,
think
but
about that?
I mean, I would say that then it's like, well, maybe that's kind of the point where if it really, really sucks, then just kind of take a step back and take a look at what is it that you want? What is it that you really want? And after leaving Scientology, that's something I've continued to ask myself over and over again because we're so conditioned in Scientology to be focused on going up the bridge to total freedom that your blinders are on to everything else. But I see the same thing with people that I know outside of Scientology too. You know what I'm saying? Where it's sometimes it's so much easier to focus on all the crap that's going wrong that you forget what it is you were doing in the first place and you lose focus on where you're going while you're and why you are doing that. And then that's where I think it becomes more, gobbled up that way. Because if I try to take a step back myself when I'm struggling and when I'm really stressed. In fact, earlier today was totally that. And I had to remind myself, okay, what am I running into? All right, I'm running into this issue and I'm running into this issue. I took a few steps back in my head and I'm like, okay, that's okay. It's here's what I can do. Here's what's going to be my next step. Here's going to be my next plan. And I have moments too in times where I'm like, you know what? I just want to give into it. But this is what I do. And I'm not saying anyone should do this. I'll look and go, okay, I'm going to go in the shower and I'm going to cry for 20 minutes. I'm just going to just let it all out. I don't know why I like to do my crying in the shower. I think because it helps with, your nose gets all stuffy and all that stuff. And the hot water is just so comfortable and the steam swirling around and, you're alone. I'll try to do that as well. That is a question too I'm curious about. And you tell me, Erin, how do you deal with stress differently today than when you were in Scientology? When you think about the things that you need to do, when you run into issues where it's like, somebody just got in your way on this or that didn't work out.
My knee-jerk answer here is no. And it depends on how you define stress. Okay, so for me, being in the Sea Org, the greatest stress I could imagine, and it's not just imagining that I went through, is feeling like I don't want to be here anymore. I'm about to be in a lot of trouble that I'm not sure I'm going to make my way through. I'm not willing to do the RPF. I will not do the RPF. I don't want to get divorced. How do I get through this intact? And I would almost have to, but I would never go to someone else and ask them for counsel on what I should do. Ever, 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 ever. I can barely even imagine doing that. Not on small things, but on major things. Because at the end of the day, you've got to live with your own decision. How can you ask someone else what they think you should do? And so I would sit down literally in my office by myself and handle myself on what frame of mind I needed to be in order to effectively resolve whatever problem I was in right there. And I just sit there and think until I personally felt, okay, I know exactly how to move forward on this. And once I handled myself, I could handle anything, like anything. And that is how I still deal with incredibly stressful situations, particularly ones over the last 7 months, where I will never, ever, ever go to someone else and be like, tell me how I should think about this differently. Because I go, if I got to ask someone else, I've already lost. I have to know how to do it. And the thing is, the procedure that I'm kind of describing right now, it's not like Scientology tells you to do that. I don't know that I'm describing something I took from Scientology. It's just how I handled stress in Scientology and the Sea Org. And I think that approach allowed me to last as long as I did without getting sent to the RPF or getting declared earlier than I did. I don't know. I'm kind of babbling, but whatever I did then, I feel like it's the same thing that I do now. And yet, what I was doing then wasn't really a Scientology based thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I don't think that they really equipped us, even in the Sea Org, to to deal with stress. Stress wasn't even really a word that
That's right.
was
It's actually they
thrown
considered
around.
that's a WOG word. That's not a
That's a
Scientology word.
WOG word.
They don't use the
Exactly.
word stress in Scientology.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? You don't go to your boss or your senior in Scientology or the seer and go, I'm just feeling a little stressed today. So I think I'm gonna maybe work from home. Maybe take the day off.
Could you imagine asking for a mental health day at an org? You'd be, oh my God.
That's something that I know today in my life today, especially since I've been working with other people, and having a boss is being okay with taking time off. It's still to this day, I struggle with it. I do it and I know that it's okay. I mean, I have PTO. That's why it's there, these vacation days when things come up. And it's still, I just get this feeling in my gut that's just sickening, which sucks because I usually am not taking time off unless I am sick. And then, it just adds to it. And I think a lot of that is because we just were never allowed to do that. The last thing you wanted to be in the Sea Org was sick, because then you had to go to isolation, which I
Oh
feel like they
yeah.
intentionally made as horrible as possible. So you'd never want to be there. You could be like coughing up blood and your senior would be like, "Are you sick?" No, I'm fine.
Just an
Nothing.
allergy.
Yeah, it's just allergies, nothing to see here. You want to get into do this big old giant handling. I don't think about that anymore. Like if I get sick or I stub my toe or something happens, I don't automatically go like, "Oh my gosh, who is suppressing me?" My realization post Scientology, and for those that don't know, in Scientology, if you get sick, if you just start making a bunch of mistakes and all this stuff, there's, especially if you get sick, someone is suppressing you and you need to handle that because now you're a potential trouble source.
Mhm.
And this was a big thing in Scientology, this idea of somebody is suppressing me, which I often thought that doesn't really add up, because on one hand, somebody's suppressing me. On the other hand, I'm supposed to be at cause over all this. But my takeaway post Scientology, how I see it now, one, I don't believe anyone can suppress me. I think you got to have my agreement to do that. And you're not getting it. That was a game changer. And I realized that for me, that was part of that Scientology cult mentality, that I need to go and look for, well, this suppressive thing is going on. And there was a little bit of truth in it, right? Because sometimes if somebody's being a total asshole to you, now you're focused on that and maybe you're not paying attention to what you're doing. And you know what I'm saying? Like there is a little bit of truth in that, but it's not the whole reason. Viruses and bacteria make you sick.
I'll tell you what, the fact that Scientologists believe that in order to get sick, you have to be PTS, you have
Mhm.
to be the effect of some source of suppression, is why I've never been able to understand what David Miscavige's obsession was with locking down all of the Scientology organizations for like 3 years over COVID. Scientologists are pretty notoriously have a bias against medicine and anything to do with pharma. And a lot of Scientologists are anti-vax, even though L. Ron Hubbard never really said anything about that. There's just
Yeah.
this very anti-medicine bias. And Miscavige shut down the orgs so much more thoroughly and for so much more time than the world.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't know how Scientologists explain to themselves why Miscavige seemed to be acting in a way that was inconsistent with
What is
Scientology's
that?
beliefs. Something to do with the iOS platform has different gestures, do different things. Like, watch this.
I want fireworks.
Where's the laser show? Where's the laser show?
I have
Come
no
on now.
lasers.
Maybe it can't. There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Boom. Miscavige, generally speaking, in Scientology, they don't worry about health that much because it's like, well, if you're not PTS, you're going to be perfectly healthy.
Yeah.
And so Miscavige is acting in a way that, to be honest, was inconsistent with Scientology's belief in PTS and SP. And I just don't know how most Scientologists explained that went away. Not to get even remotely political about this, guys. I'm just talking about it in the context of Scientology.
Yeah, exactly. The gloves and all that went on longer, it seemed. I would love to know that too.
The
What they thought about
gloves.
it.
You
Yeah,
knew
they
you
wore the
can spot
gloves.
for years. You could spot a Scientologist in Clearwater because they were the only clown walking down the street with gloves, lunch lady plastic gloves, and a mask. Like a year after the rest of the world had opened wide up, it was weird.
I wonder if it was just another way to control them, to keep them there, to keep them, stuck there. I know, and I'm curious, any other people who used to be in the Sea Org or even on staff, you know how you could never, like, at least in my day, you just couldn't just leave the base. There was a period of time where you couldn't, like, you could go across the street, but
Yeah,
excuse me, but not really, you can't just go take off.
right.
And that feeling of being like, I can't leave. I need to stay here. Sometimes I wonder if that's not why, like, if I'm going somewhere and it's not in my plan to stop and get gas, I cannot stop and get gas. I have to ahead of time. Okay, I'm going somewhere. What am I going to do? I'm going to get gas. I'm going to pick this up, and then I'm going to be at my office. And any alteration of that, it's just like, oh, nope, nope, nope.
Oh my God, I'm the same way.
Really?
I'm the same way. If we're
So
heading
is my
somewhere, oh, can we
sister.
stop here? No, why not? Because that wasn't the plan. We're not.
Yeah, no,
That wasn't
we
the
were
plan.
going this way.
No.
Yeah. So I wonder if that is a thing because my sister's like that too. And it got to the point too where for her, she even struggled with leaving the house, like, and way post Scientology, it was part of her PTSD. And it was the same feeling when she would describe it that she would get being stuck at the base or being forced to stay on the international base. That same type of feeling. So I try to now, I'm like, okay, I need to break that. And I think the only way to do it is to do it. So I try to do things a little differently, even little things. Like I don't brush my teeth the same way. I used to always do it the same way, exactly the same way. And I realized like I was getting so hung up on doing things exactly a certain way. And I asked myself, do I have this compulsion of having to do something exactly the same way because maybe I'm a little OCD, or is it because I was so indoctrinated to believe that you do it the same way? Like when you do, I don't know if you ever went to the ship and did any of their training there. And even in the Sea Org, you always got to be prepared for some kind of disaster. And that's why it's so important that everything is done the same way. Everybody does everything the same way. You wash a car like this. You do laundry like this. And it's all the same way. So I try to, as much as possible, kind of break those circuits. We go the same way to work, stuff. I mean, sometimes that can't be helped.
All right, let's see. Oh, I think this was from early on when we were talking. Oh, just about the Hawaii emergency crisis or the Hawaii missile alert. We survived incident 2. We got this. I can never remember what incident 1 and incident 2 are, but I get the joke. Dylan Blowdrill says, I was able to get a CSW approved to go to my great grandmother's funeral when I was at Flag. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. It's really good when it works out. I knew so many people where it didn't.
Louis Repetto says, in Scientology language, LRH is invalidating the body to have zero meaning. It's
That
interesting. I
makes a
think
lot
that's
of
also how
sense.
Scientologists explain away why L. Ron Hubbard very obviously did not take good care of his physical health.
Because he wasn't paying attention to his body.
Or they say, it's just a body, who cares? And you go, the way to happiness says otherwise,
Yeah. Or like the smoking.
Yeah.
So many Sea Org members, I don't know if that's still the case, but I know in my day, we're big smokers. More so in the Sea Org than outside of the Sea Org. More so on staff
it's
than
crazy.
Than public Scientologists.
It's a miracle that I never smoked. Like, my mom smoked when I was growing up. All the staff members smoked. The Sea Org members smoked. It's the one thing that I was like, ew, that's nasty.
I tried it when I was on that training program when I was like 15. I didn't like it because everybody was smoking. And there was this girl, she was this really cool. I thought she was so cool. And she was from Australia and she was my age. She was 16 and she had already been married for like over a year. And she smoked. But I just hated it so much.
Wow. Nancy Alley, but how would you know you're doing the best for the group when you're not allowed to communicate with the others?
Exactly. I think what they don't really mean doing what's best for the group. It's doing what Scientology says you should do, what L. Ron Hubbard says you should do, or then what David Miscavige says you should do is what's best for the group. We as individuals didn't know that, or we may have had another idea of what we thought was best for the group. But when you hear that in Scientology, the greatest good, doing what's best for the group, it's whatever the agenda is in that particular moment for Scientology, the Sea Organization, or David Miscavige. If it suited Scientology, if there was some benefit to Scientology for Sea Org members to have children, they would have them. There's no benefit. And if nothing, and even they knew it's just kids were being harmed and abused, but they didn't change anything. They just got rid of it. What was that, 86 or so, I think, when that came out?
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in Scientology, what's true is what's true for you. As long as what's true for you is what's true for me. Paula Bazak, is it rude to ask Natalie her nationality? Was she born in
Not
Hawaii?
at all. I was, and you can ask me anything. I was born in Hawaii. I'm Hawaiian, Portuguese, American Indian, Scottish, Irish, and Chinese. Because you're hard pressed to find a Hawaiian who's not also Chinese. Because the Chinese went over to Hawaii and worked a lot in the fields, and there was a lot of mixing going on. There's a lot of very mixed people in Hawaii, because I always joke that the Hawaiian people and the Polynesians were just very open.
Did you ever do one of those DNA tests?
Yes. Yeah, I did. I think there were the only few things, it was like a tiny bit of like Arabian, and it takes back, what specific, like maybe what parts of China. But yeah, it wasn't nothing too surprising. Was there anything surprising?
Nope. It said, you're white. You're definitely white. A lot of British, Irish, German, stuff like that. What you'd expect, really. Anon says, there's also an extra level of awareness after being in a cult that you can use to help other people. I think that's true. Incarnate Unlimited, I am the culmination of how I reacted to everything that ever happened to me.
Oh, I can see that too. Definitely.
Muriel Stonewall, 3 to 54. I look at it this way. If I did not get into Scientology, it would be a different life. Who knows? Just a different path.
Now, here's a question for you. What do you think about the idea that we were always supposed to end up somewhere, or we were always supposed to learn a certain thing? So even if you're going down this path and you take this turn here, that you somehow, when you get back on that path, things align better. And in my experience, they feel like they're going better. But when you deviate, it becomes more, it's harder. Things aren't going right, even if you're not fully aware of where you're supposed to be going. And I thought about that in the Sea Org, like how you don't meet too many people that overall just come out or like, yes, being in the Sea Organization was amazing. But I've seen so many kind of recreate their life. That's actually one of my favorite things, to find out what people are doing now, what they're enjoying now. Every time I meet a new ex-Sea Org member, I just want to be like, so what are you doing now? Do you watch movies? Do you read books? Because those are things that we couldn't do. You couldn't have a television in my day. The only time you could go to movies, oh my gosh, was like if Battlefield Earth came out, or I hear now it's a Tom Cruise movie. Although I did go to a movie on Christmas once, I remember that. And we did go on Christmas, was a day that I pretty much regularly, we did something, went to the movies. I think went to Disneyland once. Is it Disneyland in California or Disney World?
Disneyland in California.
Okay, yeah. Went to Disneyland. So you got to wonder.
Yeah, I don't. So when you say that there's like that, to a degree, things are kind of predetermined,
I wonder. I don't think they're completely predetermined. It just seems like, and I feel this way, that when when I'm headed in a certain direction, in creating my life a certain way, and if I kind of veer off, sometimes it totally works and it still gets me to where I want to be going. And sometimes you veer off and it just is like chug, 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 and it's not working and you're getting distracted by all these other things. And then when you kind of get back onto, like I was saying earlier, this idea of what kind of life do you want? That was something that was really hard for me to figure out. And I swear, I think it took me up until very recently to figure that out, what kind of life I wanted. Because I would say I've been out for almost 13 years. And I would say probably only up until the last 2 years did I realize that I had spent so much time. I know I don't want Scientology. I don't want that. I don't want to go back to the Sea Org. Because, you have all these nightmares about going back, that they come to get you and that you go willingly, at one point. And when with time, as that started to quiet down more, and I realized, wow, I'm still so focused on what I don't want that I'm not thinking about what I do want. And I've had people, it probably helps that I've had some really awesome people in my life in the last few years. And Tony's like my number one cheerleader. And he's always asking me that. And he's always like this, you can do anything that you decide that you want to do. And I've worked with people who share that, like who've asked like, well, what do you want to do? If you could do anything, what would it be? What would you want to do? It took me a really long time to get to where I could even accept the idea that I had a choice, that I could be doing something different, that I could create something different. Because what are we told? We're told if we leave, our lives are going to go to hell. They're going to fall apart. This is going to happen. That is going to happen. So I think part of the PTSD is living your life walking on eggshells because you're so worried of what boogeyman's going to come out of the corner and get you because you're not doing, you're not back doing your posts or doing this thing in Scientology. That starts falling away. Did I make a mistake? That's not a thought I've had for a million years, it feels like. But you know what I'm saying? Because it's made to be such a big deal. If you leave, things will go so wrong.
Absolutely. God, that hadn't even really occurred to me. In Scientology, well, particularly if you're on staff and in the Sea Org. I'm going to say some stuff and then I'm going to want to kind of modify this stuff. If you're a staff member or you're a Sea Org member, you're not trying to figure out what you want to do with your life, what you really want to do. You'd get in trouble if you decided that what you really wanted to do was something other than what you're already doing.
Yeah.
It's not even a thought process that exists, is what do I actually want in life? And some of the irony here is that there was one course in Scientology called the Life Orientation course, where the entire purpose of the course was to figure out what your true purpose in life is. And one of the reasons David Miscavige got rid of that course is way too many people were deciding that their purpose in life was something other than working for Scientology.
Wow, I didn't know we got rid of it.
You can't do Key to Life and LOC anymore.
Really?
They don't exist. There's no delivery teams. You cannot buy and pay and do those courses.
Wow. Did you do them?
Yes, I loved them.
Yeah, I did it.
They were actually transformational courses for me, particularly because I did them at such a young age. It allowed me to think about life and focus on life, even if through a Scientology lens. But at 13 years old, 14 years old, people aren't usually having the opportunity to spend months and months and months thinking about their life. Yeah. And for me, it actually was helpful for me at that young age to focus on that. But what it also did for me at that time was get me very, very, very focused on, unfortunately, working for Scientology.
Yeah.
It just so happened to be that I embraced it, right? But it's funny that Miscavige got rid of the one course that was actually supposed to be to help people figure out how they really wanted to be happiest in life.
And how you could bring the different parts of your life in alignment with what that was, with what you wanted to do. I agree with you on that. I could have lived without all of the small world words, even though it was helpful. But that was like, oh my gosh, that was kind of like, the book was this big that you had to study and learn every definition of is, the, of, or, and all that.
I had them all memorized. I did it so many times.
Really?
I was that little nerd. I did the 6C book. The 6C book was the one with all the small common words. I
Yeah.
kept getting retwinned, and I did that book so many times. I quite literally had the definitions memorized as to the sequence and the content of all the small
Wow.
common words. I
Yeah.
was the nerdiest of the nerds.
I agree with you, though.
Um,
I'm surprised they got rid of that. I thought it was because
but
it
when
took everybody too long.
it was
Y
long.
Yeah, if you got
But
somebody
what
on that for a couple years, you can't be making money off of them for another service
exactly.
because you couldn't
Oh,
mix with
oh,
that
oh.
one.
Part of the exercise on the key to life was to learn the alphabet backwards. I still remember it. Do
Oh,
you?
no.
ZYXWVUTSRQPONMLKJIHGFEDCBA.
Oh my
Never
gosh.
forgot it. Learned it in 15 minutes. Never forgot it.
Wow.
Um, but but no, when you said like only in the last 2 years have you actually
Mhm.
started to wonder, what do I actually want to do in life? I don't know. There's something about you saying that made me realize
Yeah.
you're not even allowed to think. That's a
No.
pointless thought in Scientology.
Yeah. You don't even realize that you get to decide, that you get to
Right.
choose, especially as a child growing up in Scientology, when the indoctrination starts so early and continues. Everything is to get you in pretty much into the Sea Org or onto staff as far as Scientology is concerned, which makes sense because they can't get anybody else to come in. So they just have to go with, taking the kids of Scientologists. But your existence is all about training to become a Sea Org member and a good Sea Org member. Whereas you don't even think it was never an option. My parents never talked to me about, college. That was never even an option. It
Oh
was
no, it was
never
looked
even an
down
option.
on.
Yeah.
Looked
Yeah.
down on.
Yeah. You were wasting time. But if it's interesting to think, and I would challenge all the ex-Scientologists out there to just think, what is it you really want to do? Have you decided or entertained the idea? It's so fun to just think about that sometimes, like, okay, what would I like to do? Sometimes I'll do it with my day or my morning, like on the weekend, because even though I've been out for a while, I'm still completely giddy over the fact that weekends are weekends, although not always when you're in real estate, but the idea of having that time off, working, and I working 5 days and then you have 2 days off. That's like that felt like a vacation to me compared to what our schedules were before. But that's part of why I think the cult keeps you so busy, is so you don't have time. You don't have freedom of mind. The mind control stops you from having these thoughts. You don't have time to just sit there and daydream about, gosh, I wonder what I would want to do. I didn't grow up thinking that way. So like I said, I had to be far enough away to realize, because you know why? Because people were asking me, what do you want to do? What really, if you could do anything, blah, 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 blah. And I'd be like, oh, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing. And
It's
that's not
crazy.
not true, but there are other things I do want to do.
I keep it's I keep having the same realization that it never dawned on me that that's the gear that I got into,
Yeah.
which is whatever it is you're doing right now, the best you can aspire to do is to be as good as that as possible.
Yeah.
You cannot aspire to do something else other
Mhm.
than what you're doing. You can just try to get as good at it as possible, and that's the best you can hope for. That is a great it's never dawned on me that that is pretty much how I operate usually in life.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, I'm always focused on just how to get more efficient or better at whatever it is that's right in front of me, but for no particular reason, then it happens to be what's right in front of me.
Mhm.
Someone would have to remind me, you don't actually have to be doing this if you don't really want to. It's like,
Yeah.
never even dawned on me that that would be true.
Yeah. Once you get on the hamster wheel, you just keep going, no matter what it is. You just keep
Yeah.
going and going and going and going. And because that's what we were raised to do. No matter what we were doing, what our job was, where we were put, we were to just keep going and going on that hamster wheel and not take the time to think, hey, maybe I don't want to do this. And I think when you've been trapped for such a long time, you never allowed we don't allow ourselves the freedom to have those thoughts. It's kind of like if you're, when you're married, It's like although I don't know, sometimes it's easier to have those thoughts depending on how your marriage is going. But it's you don't. Oh, it's like parenting. There's life before kids, and there's life after kids, and there's life with kids. You're not going to always be raising children. So the solutions or the things you did in your life when you're raising children may not work when you're empty nester and no longer raising children. That's what I came to realize too, especially when I became an empty nester, because I was a parent at such a young age, married at 17, first kid at 19, in Scientology till I was 40 something. That would just like was always the thing. What is my next course? What is my next service? How do do my kids need to be in Scientology? And that is something I never pushed. My oldest actually got on course because of my mom and my stepdad. My stepdad really got her going, I think, on course, and Shelby can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but we would go to the org and do things, but it wasn't something that I pushed like you need to go and get on course. I was trying to get off course myself.
Man, I would have been pissed if one of my parents got one of my kids on course.
Yeah.
I'd be like,
so that wasn't, did they ever try?
No, well, my dad was never in Scientology. And my kids, my wife and I were both declared before my kids ever even heard the word Scientology.
Ah, okay.
Although, ironically, so we had our first kid in 2006. I was not declared until 2014. That's about 8 years. So yeah, we had kids for 8 years, and we simply never ever pushed or even not only never pushed Scientology on them, they never even heard the word, which was weird because it's not like my wife and I had an agreement not to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We just knew, like, nope.
Yeah. I think you see that a lot. I remember seeing many Scientologists who were higher up on the bridge to total freedom, and who had children. And I remember one in particular, I think he was on OT7, so operating Thetan level 7, actively auditing on it, and his children were never really involved. I knew a few like that. I think they even went off to college. And I remember thinking, like, why is that? And I frankly, I'm surprised, like, he's still in. I thought for sure, like, because that would be the next step. If you're not pushing this on your kids, you already know that this is not right, that this is not the situation you should have them in, or that you're really happy there. You're not a happy person in your life. If it's something you're really enjoying and you're getting something out of, you talk about it and you want to share it with people. And if you're not, then maybe it's not what you should be doing. But there aren't those thoughts. It's like they're just trying to protect their kids and keep the separation there.
Yeah, I totally agree. Pause for Andrea. Speaking for myself, I think that's why us Neverends are fascinated by your stories. Your resilience and ability to move forward is remarkable and admirable.
Oh, that's very sweet. And I think a lot of it does come from that, right? We always had to push through. I hate the phrase, the make it go right. Make it go right. Make it go right.
The way out is the way through. It's like,
what
no, the way out.
Exactly. What turns it on, turns it off.
Oh, Lord. Anon says that created witch hunts every time you would get sick.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Someone had to find the suppressive person every time somebody got sick.
Yeah.
Anon says they even wore gloves to house visits a year after the end of COVID.
Ooh, yeah. That's awkward. Seems even a little rude.
I know, right? Exactly. It does seem rude. Incarnate Unlimited. I can wax philosophical all I want. Bottom line, at the end of the day, though, you are more. You are more what you do than what you believe or think. You can have the greatest moral set, but if you never use it, what do? And then it ran out.
Oh, yeah. No, I get that.
I agree with that as well. Incarnate Unlimited also says this: the closest to a cult I was being a witch privately. I didn't have a group of witches. Do they call it a coven? What do they call a group of witches? Does anybody know?
Hey, live
coven. Chat. Oh, it is a coven. Okay, how about that? I did not have a group of witches I associated with, or it could have been more cultish. Yep.
Could be. I got a couple books on witchcraft. On it, it
Yeah.
actually came about in an odd way because I like making candles. I wanted to make some candles, so I had to learn how to make the candles. Then I had to learn what went in the candles, and it was essential oil. So then I thought, okay, these essential oils are kind of expensive. Could I make my own? Yes. You have to get the herbs. Where do you get the herbs? Oh, what else can the herbs do? I just went down this whole thing. And then my takeaway that witchcraft is pretty much just using rituals to set your intention. I don't know that all that stuff matters. I did not become a witch, but if that's what works for you, then
I was really hoping you were going to say, and where do you get herbs? Witches.
I have an apothecary in my I'm in my office in the podcast studio at home, and I have all my oils and lotions so I can make my own lotions. I like to make balms, all kinds of things. Candle making is a gateway drug to witchcraft. Girl, yes. Because when I was researching it, some of the books about natural medicine, then a few of them were kind of in that category, but nothing I came across, and I'm sure it's there, was more the black magic type of stuff. It was more, here's crystals and herbs and what you can do with it. I just know that today I make a killer lip balm and I suck at candles.
Oh, man. Well, this has been a fun chat. I want to remind everyone, Natalie's channel is Scientology, Life After a Cult. Let's keep doing videos together, Natalie. Anything and everything you want to chat about, let's chat about it.
Yeah, I have a whole list of topics that I've been working on. Every time I think of something, I'm like, oh yeah. And I would love to hear too from all of you. What do you want to hear about? There's some things that like I've gotten in the comments on my channel that really made me think, which I think is the biggest reason why I love doing this, Aaron, because the comments, the being able to interact, it just so much having those different points of view. Because I love being able to see something from a different way, because I think that's the only way to have more of a well-rounded idea or understanding is to be able to look at it from over here and then from over here. But if I've never been over there, I don't know how to look at it from there. And that's why I love people who've never been in Scientology, which is pretty much everyone, because it helps with that different point of view. When you grew up with this very, very strict way of thinking, it doesn't allow for a different point of view. So I borrow them from other people. Oh, you're Scottish.
Sorry, I clicked the wrong thing.
Nice.
All right, cool, everyone. Well, thanks for hanging out with us this, I was going to say afternoon, but it's evening, isn't it? It is for me.
I think so.
Thank you, as always, to everyone who watches until the very end, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, if you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right